Hello, my name is Valeria Romero, and in this presentation I'll be going over the history of Bolivia and Bolivia present day. The first slide is fast facts. As of the 2009 constitutional referendum, which I will be going over further on, Bolivia officially recognizes Spanish and 36 indigenous languages as the official languages of Bolivia. Before this referendum was passed, Bolivia only recognized 3 languages as the official languages: Spanish, Aymara, Quechua, and those are the 3. The current 2019 Bolivian population is 11.5 million. It's the 10th largest Latin American country, including the Caribbean. Bolivia recognizes Roman Catholicism as the official language of the country. Roman Catholicism is the most predominant religion, composing 3/4 of the entire national population. However, Protestant denominations have been rising in Bolivia, along with the rest of Latin America. As stated earlier, Bolivia has recognized 36 indigenous languages along with Spanish as the official languages of the country. This is to represent the 36 indigenous populations that reside in Bolivia. Aymara and Quechua make up the majority of the total indigenous population, representing 3.5 million people, and they reside in the highlands. The next slide is about pre- and post-independent Bolivia. Before Bolivia's independence, it was grouped into a region that consisted of parts of Peru, Brazil, Paraguay, and Chile, known as Upper Peru. While Bolivia gained its independence in 1895, riots began in the later 18th century by those who wished to return to the Incan Empire and forego their new Spanish rulers. Finally, in 1809, the War of Independence began, with uprisings that continued to form despite government interference for 16 years. Due to this initial battle in 1809, the Spanish never fully controlled Upper Peru from there on. The end of the war was due to Antonio José de Sucre's army that freed Upper Peru, which allowed Simón Bolívar and Antonio José de Sucre to hold autonomy of the region. The armed rebellion spread like wildfire across Latin America and allowed Bolivia to pick up on the gained momentum and join in. In honor of those who fought for Bolivia's independence, it was named after Simón Bolívar, someone who they considered to be their hero. When Bolivia first jumped into the trade market, it only relied on a few trade exports to garner the needed products the country could not produce itself. This would result in instances that put the economy to the test. Bolivia heavily relied on its tin exports, which began to decrease over time, unlike their natural gas exports, which rose from 23% in the late 1980s. Furthermore, Bolivia earned up to $1 billion due to the coca export products, which were not recorded along with its other foreign trade deals, most likely due to illegal smuggling of the product. What once used to be Bolivia's strongest export, natural gas, soon changed as time progressed. While Bolivia relied on trading natural gas, as of 2014, the decline in oil prices resulted in lower exports and GDP growth rates, as low as 4.3% in 2016. Today, Bolivia is the 93rd largest export economy on a global scale and mainly trades with Brazil and Argentina, 2 countries on Bolivia's border. Additionally, Bolivia's current top exports are petroleum gas, zinc ore, and gold. Both petroleum gas and zinc ore cover a huge portion of Bolivia's recent exports, a grand 48.7% in total of its total exports. This slide is about Bolivia's religious festivals, one being the Carnaval de Oruro and the second one being Feria de las Alasitas. The Carnaval of Oruro is in the town of Oruro in western Bolivia, which hosts a 3-day indigenous festival celebrating the Virgin of Candelaria. It begins on the Saturday before Ash Wednesday. One of the main events of the carnival is known as the Entrada, which requires dancers to walk 2.4 miles along a route and repeat this walk for a total of 20 hours. This festival boasts many dancers adorned with costumes that honor certain indigenous gods, such as the Aymara and Chancho. One of the most famous rituals of the carnival is a dance entitled the Llama Llama, otherwise known as the Dance of the Devil. Each float in the carnival is accompanied with costumes and a plethora of decorations, which honor the religious beliefs being celebrated. The Festival of Oruro also holds a ritual for the Virgin Socavon, the saint of the miners, since Oruro is known as an important mining region in Bolivia. In my final presentation, I also plan on going more in depth about this festival of Oruro and the Alicitas festival in La Paz. So I plan on adding that in my final presentation. In 2009, Bolivian President Evo Morales proposed a constitutional referendum which would implement a wide variety of reforms, including indigenous rights. At the time of the vote, it was indicated to be widely popular and sure to pass. Although it still received a mass amount of rejection from some states, with the new edition of the new referendum, the new constitution would broaden definitions of property to include communal ownership, allow Indians to mete out corporal punishment under their own legal systems, extend limited autonomy to regional prefects, and reaffirm state control over Bolivia's ample natural gas reserves. Furthermore, the referendum aimed to further promote indigenous rights by labeling Bolivia as a plurinational country, noting all indigenous nations which reside in Bolivia, and even ensures seats in Congress for indigenous Indians. Although the 2009 referendum was passed, there was massive opposition, claiming the vote should have required a unanimous vote from all government departments, and questioned how the laws will affect the country due to the broad language in the referendum. It was this constitutional referendum that was one of the many causes of Bolivia's issues present day. Before Morales became the first indigenous president of Bolivia in 2006, presidents were banned from running for a second term. It wasn't until Morales initiated the referendum, which instituted many changes as explained above. It also allowed for a president to seek re-election, allowing Morales to be re-elected in 2009. Being the first indigenous president of Bolivia representing the Aymara indigenous people, Morales earned a majority of his votes from the vast indigenous populations. When his second term was up and 2013 came around, the court ultimately allowed Morales the opportunity to rerun for a third term in 2014, since the first term technically didn't count, given that it was before the 2009 constitutional referendum. It was this constitutional reform that allowed Morales to bypass the Constitution and seek 3 terms and 4 terms today. The next slide is about LGBTQ rights. As of May 2016, the Plurinational Assembly established a bill allowing people to change their gender on identification documents. This means that transgender citizens can change their photo, gender, and name on all official government identification documents. This bill proved to be monumental in Bolivia, since it is regarded as a country with deep ties to the Catholic Church. President Evo Morales and Vice President Alvaro Garcia Linera were able to pass the bill through Congress while keeping it under wraps in order to avoid any possible opposition that could come its way from the general public. While the decision to pass the bill was extraordinary and seemed to be able to change the lives of many, a transgender woman named Luna married her husband later that year, therefore becoming the first transgender individual in Bolivia to marry someone of the same sex. Unfortunately, the marriage was discovered by the government, which then deemed that this bill did not grant same-sex marriage, which goes against the 2009 Bolivian Constitution. Furthermore, in my final presentation, I plan to go over why there would be opposition in Bolivia to this bill and LGBTQ sentiments in Bolivia. I plan to include more information about what's going on in Bolivia today in my final presentation, what happened in the recent election, why Evo left, why there's an interim leader, and all the protests that happened in Bolivia, and yes, what's going on now, basically. And for my reflection, I plan on including, once again, present day Bolivia, what's going on, the future of what could happen, especially with the change in leadership and relating it back to its history.